Hello everybody et bienvenue à notre épisode du podcast Donc Voilà Quoi, le podcast où je parle avec mes potes comiques. Aujourd'hui, je suis avec Matt Fusfeld. C'est qui Matt Fusfeld? C'est un grand ami qui habite à Los Angeles. En fait, d'abord, j'aimerais dire, j'espère que vous avez passé un bon été. Parce que oui, ça fait un moment. Et moi, j'ai fait un putain de vacances aux Etats Unis. Donc j'étais à Los Angeles où j'ai plusieurs potes qui travaillent dans le milieu. On dit ça comme ça, on dit milieu. Et il travaille, il est scénariste pour une série qui s'appelle The New Girl. Et il est co-auteur, en fait. Il travaille avec un collègue qui est aussi un grand ami à moi, qui s'appelle Alex Cuthbertson. Donc c'est Alex Cuthbertson et Matt Fusfeld qui travaillent. Ils ont commencé leur carrière en tant que scénariste pour une série qui s'appelle American Dad, qui a été diffusée, je pense, en France sur une chaîne méconnue, sûrement. Et c'était le même créateur qui ont fait les Griffins. Je pense qu'on dit ça comme ça. C'est The Family Guy aux États-Unis. En français, c'est les Griffins. Et c'est le même genre qui ont fait American Dad. Donc, ils ont commencé sur cette émission. Après, Matt et Alex, ils ont travaillé un peu sur Community, une autre série, et aussi maintenant ils sont sur The New Girl, qui est une série avec Zooey Deschanel. Comment elle est mignonne. Voilà. Et donc là, j'étais chez lui. Il m'a hébergé comme un grand ami. Et on a fait ce podcast dans son jardin. Donc il y a un peu de bruit d'LA, quoi. Il y a de bruit de sirène à l'américaine ou d'un hélicoptère, parce que à Los Angeles, on ne sait pas pourquoi, mais il y a des hélicoptères qui passent sur la ville. Et en fait, on a fait dehors parce que j'en avais marre d'être à l'intérieur. À Los Angeles, il fait beau tout le temps, donc on passe notre vie à l'intérieur, parce que avec la clim et tout. Et on a parlé de sa carrière, de Matt Fusfeld. Donc si jamais vous avez une petite rêve de peut-être déménager, aller à Los Angeles pour percer en tant que scénariste dans une petite série, il faut écouter ce podcast. Aussi si vous parlez anglais. Bon, d'ailleurs, si vous pensez aller à Los Angeles sans au moins comprendre l'anglais, c'est pas très bien parti, honnêtement. Donc voilà, c'est un petit aperçu dans la vie à Hollywood. Si tu aimerais écrire pour une petite série là-bas aux États-Unis. Bonne écoute. Yes, I'm here with Matt Fusfeld.
Hello.
Matt Fusfeld, who I know ever since from college.
Yes.
From Boston University. We went to and I was trying to think about it. I don't even remember, how did we meet?
Acting class.
That was senior year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We knew each other peripherally, but we
yeah.
became friends.
I've heard legends.
Yeah, likewise.
And then we both went on a road trip.
Yes.
The following summer, the summer after graduating.
That's right.
We met up in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
We ate at the Stinking Rose.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, per the San Francisco native Alex Cuthbertson's recommendation, the Stinking Rose.
Yeah.
A local spot, which is actually a chain.
Yeah. Is it a chain?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I thought it was kind of a tourist trap.
It is.
It is, but it's good. I had fun.
When I saw you on that cross-country trip in San Francisco, I was on my way to move out to LA.
Yeah.
And I got sidetracked and lived in Boulder for a year.
Well, because you studied TV.
Mm-hmm.
You majored in TV, because we went to communications together. I majored in film, you majored in TV.
Yeah, which is a pretty ridiculous major.
Both of them.
Film, at least, is sort of respectable. TV...
Well, it's more respected as an art form.
Right.
Then you were on your way out to LA because you were like, LA is the place for me.
Yes. I wanted to be a sitcom writer.
When did you know that?
I knew that right when senior year, acting class, that whole era, a lot of things came together. One of them was I took this class called Writing for TV, taught by a professor named Marty Cook, who's this woman who was a writer for Full House and Charles in Charge.
Yeah.
And it was this night class, and it was, I think, the first day of classes senior year, that was on the first evening, and this class, she just laid out what steps you could take to becoming a sitcom writer, and one of the most important ones was moving to Los Angeles, but also
like step one, move to LA.
Yeah, that
pretty
is
much.
Pretty much. But also part of that, when I say confluence of events, Jessica Raplansky was in that sitcom writing class with me.
Yeah.
And so we had this...
Who is Jessica Raplansky?
Jessica Raplansky, sorry, my now wife, the mother of my son, Dylan, who's almost 2. We had class together that evening, and I asked her if she wanted to get drinks afterwards, and it kind of went from there. So a lot of different stuff happened right around that time. I became friends with you, which in turn I became friends with Alex Cuthbertson, who's now my writing partner of the past 6-7 years. We're credited as a team together whenever we do stuff. So a lot came together right around then.
Yeah, but what was the epiphany? It's like why sitcom? Why not drama? Why not film?
Well,
was it like a series that you grew up watching that was just said I want to write like that?
I mean, I grew up appreciating both appreciating and using TV as a crutch because I was such a fat outcast kid. It was like a nice place to find solace. Yeah. But I growing up, my dad, he was one of the earliest adopters of the VCR, and he taped David Letterman's show all throughout the week, and then on the weekends he would watch all of them on videotape, and I would oftentimes watch a lot of it with him too, and I gained a real appreciation for comedy, I think, that way. My dad is just a big fan of even older sitcoms like your Andy Griffith Show and Car 54, all these old black and white sitcoms, and
that are now on Nick at Night.
Yeah. Well, actually, our sitcoms from growing up are now on Nick at Night.
That's scary.
Yeah. But I love The Cosby Show and Cheers and Full House and Who's the Boss. But, as I got towards college, I was kind of thinking about becoming maybe like a news reporter or something on camera.
Yeah.
And I realized really quickly how ridiculous that was, and I was right around when Jon Stewart had taken over The Daily Show, I think, and then I kind of saw that sort of, I like that sort of man on the street satire.
Yeah.
And I think I was intending to maybe try and be a TV reporter, and the problem was I started going bald when I was 15.
Yeah.
So by the time I was early on in college, I was really losing my hair, and I had in my head that I couldn't be an on-air personality. So I kind of gave up that dream. And then I tried advertising. I was interested in all of the majors in communication school. And
do you still think that's true about being bald?
No, that's the...
It's a vision of a 15-year-old.
Yeah. Thankfully, I had that fear because it steered me off that ridiculous path.
Yeah.
But no. As it turns out, actually, I never had very good hair at all.
Yeah.
And I was so scared about going bald, and then when I went bald, it was like, oh wait, this is like the best look I've ever had. And it changed everything for the better. I wish I could tell myself that.
Yeah.
But comedy was, I think, comedy was just always the ultimate passion. And seeing that sitcom writing class, yeah, of course, the idea of writing for a sitcom sounded like a dream.
Yeah.
Lots of fun. And
were you surprised that that's even an option as a job?
I was surprised. Yeah, this woman Marty Cook, who I've thanked time and again since. It's just, she was the first person to ever put into a practical plan how that was even possible. It's like,
yeah.
So I was one of the few people in that class that just really listened to exactly what she said, and I moved out to LA eventually and became a production assistant and a writer's assistant, and got a couple freelance scripts, and she was right.
How did you get into it? Like when you first came out here, you were like 23?
Yeah, so I spent my year in Boulder living my lost year in Boulder.
Oh,
a great time.
Far from being lost.
Yeah.
You had a great time.
Highly recommend it to anybody to take at least a year off.
From everything.
At least, yeah. Because once you get locked in. But I had a contact at I had various contacts. I moved out here and stayed on our friend from acting class, Pat Casey's couch.
Oh.
In Encino, California. And it was the end of the summer of 2002, and Encino is in the valley in Los Angeles, which is very, very hot.
Yeah.
And it was just him, his writing partner, Josh Worm-Miller, who's a guy who he's written several movies with that have gotten made, and they went on to create this short-lived animated show called Golan the Insatiable that was on Fox recently. I think it's got sort of a popular comic book and online following.
I didn't know he created a show.
Yeah.
Because he was more in movies at the time.
I mean, we'll talk about that point, but the thing is, TV is a much easier way to break in than film.
Well, it's shorter.
Shorter, there's more of it. Yeah, there's more need for content. There's more opportunities. And I think a lot of the success I've had versus friends who were trying to get into film is I don't think there's quite the same sort of established route that you can take to work your way up to making a film. It's very, very difficult. So it was the end of the summer of 2002. I had never seen The Sopranos, and I slept on their couch, and we watched all 3 or 4 seasons of The Sopranos that had aired until that point over the course of 2 weeks, leading up to the premiere of like the 4th or 5th season. Yeah. Just remember we all had to sit on towels on the couch because it was so hot. We were just like, sweating.
No AC.
No AC. The other guy who was there is this guy, Craig Sherman. It's funny to talk about this now because it's coming up on like 15 years later, but Craig Sherman is like a successful business owner. He has like his own technology consulting firm, and it's like back then he was like, the latest thing that had happened to him was he'd just gotten fired from an assistant job for falling asleep at his desk or something. It's funny how these people are all adults now. Yeah. But I had a couple contacts, and it was actually a bad time to come out in retrospect because the sitcom season pretty much starts in late May or June as the cycle goes. Yeah. So I got out in September. Everybody had already hired everybody that they needed, and
and so it was like pretty much booked until March, right?
Yeah. So I just I called as many contacts as I had, asking if I could take them to coffee or lunch, and
were the contacts like through BU?
A lot through the college, through the university. Just about all of them, actually. Yeah. BU, say what you will about that school, but had really set me up with a lot of alums that I could contact. And one of them in particular was this guy, Andrew Kreisberg, who was about 8 years older than me, I think. He's a great guy, and he at the time was writing on The Simpsons.
Oh, wow.
And he took me to lunch on the Fox lot, and he was like, any way I can help, obviously, but, it's September, and we took a walk by this casting office that was casting this new series called The Pits, which was this new live-action sitcom from Mike Scully, who was a big Simpsons writer, and they had 6 episodes of it going right then. What's interesting about that show is the teenage daughter in the show was Lizzie Kaplan, who's now famously naked all the time on Showtime's Masters of Sex. And she's like very, very hot. And she was probably like 18 when that was happening. But so Andrew Kreisberg introduced me to these casting ladies, Sally Steiner and Barbie Block, and they were really nice. We really hit it off. They were like, come hang out, be our intern if you want. And so it was kind of a good thing to get out of that apartment in Encino, and I would go onto the Fox lot and just pretty much help out with casting with these ladies for free. But it was nice because it was like I was on the lot. And there's something about making a phone call from an office phone as opposed to
a house phone.
Yeah, where you feel like you're a little more confident and you can talk.
Yeah.
And while I was there, one of the people, so I was there for a month or two maybe, and really liked it.
Did you feel like they accepted you right away, that they were like...
Yeah, it was nothing what I wanted to do at all, so there was that.
But I was like... just got you physically there.
Physically there, and I was around this sitcom that only went 6 episodes, but I remember just looking at these production assistants being like, oh man, if I could just get that job. Yeah. And that was the job, by the way, that Marty Cook had said to get, these production assistant jobs. Yeah. A production assistant job on a sitcom or just a scripted show, preferably a sitcom, was like the brass ring that I needed to get. Very hard to get, very competitive. Everybody wants them, but like the perfect foot in the door.
I mean, this is kind of like understood that anyone who is a PA is there because they want to be a writer,
either a writer or a producer or just something. Yes.
Well, PA or writer's assistant.
Some of them want to be. There's also the production side of it, producers and actually, if you do not want to be a writer, people are usually pleasantly surprised that you work above. They're like, oh, that's great, that's refreshing. Yeah. So I remember being like, when I did actually get that job.
This was Reba.
Yeah. So what happened was, I got an email from this woman, Sabrina Wind, who was a BU alum. Yeah. She was a producer on Reba at the time. And she said, our night PA is leaving. Would you be interested in that? I was like, of course. And I got that email. I was like 10 feet away on the Fox lot at the casting internship. And the ladies who I was working with also knew her from a previous show, and I ran over with my resume, and it was almost like probably off-putting. I was just like, here I am. Yeah. And they're like, all right, we need to set up, and we're going to meet with some people, and I pulled out every stop I could to get that job, and thankfully got it, and I was just thrilled. I remember calling my dad afterwards and it felt like I got into Harvard or something. Yeah. It was like, I got a sitcom PA job, because those are just hard to get, and if you use them right, it's just like
it's the beginning of a career. It's a stepping stone.
We've talked about jobs we've had where you don't want to be your boss, and that I know that feeling, and it's a terrible feeling. But so to be even though you're at the bottom level, but to be in the same place as the people that you want to be.
Yeah. But I remember when you were working for Reba, I was like envious and impressed by the fact that like you can take a job that you didn't like. There are aspects that you like, but it's not, you don't want to do that job. You want to do what your boss does, and that you had that patience. Yeah. To be able to say, okay, I know this is an investment of time and energy, because I don't know if you even like the show. I don't think you like the show, or it's like fine, but it wasn't something. It wouldn't be a show that you would have created.
Yeah, I think you hit on two important things there. Patience being one of the most important parts of this, and probably most careers. I think anything in life. Patience. It was not an instant gratification in that I was going to be writing it, but I didn't care. I was more excited I come from doing all these internships in college and everything. So first of all, and then I had this job making sandwiches in Colorado. So to be getting my first real full-time paycheck, even in the field of TV, being healthcare, all that stuff, was a great feeling. And to just have a badge to go on the Fox lot, and as far as it not being my style of comedy, I think That's
it was a comedy show? I don't remember.
Yeah, it was a popular, very typical sitcom about a single mom played by Reba McEntire and her zany kids and the people in her life. But I think to put it in a word, always have and still do have a reasonable expectations. Where I was like, well, sure, my ideal job maybe back then, or I don't even know what it would have been, but maybe like, I don't know, writing for David Letterman, or at that time, Curb Your Enthusiasm. I don't know, like there's obviously very high quality
comedy,
very highbrow stuff, but my expectations were always just kind of set at like, well, I'd like to get a script on a show. I'd like to write for a show. Yeah. The joy of it, and I think this has helped me, has always been more in the day-to-day of it than the being able to say this is what I do to impress people.
Yeah.
I think that makes a big difference, because I've been on more high-profile shows where I've been less happy, and I've been on... So it's just about sort of...
Well, finding that balance, because also it is important, the kind of prestige that comes along with it.
Not so much the prestige, but the you want to make yourself laugh. You want to make the people around you that you respect laugh.
You want to be proud of what
you want to get it on TV.
Yeah.
So that's very important.
Yeah.
Saying I worked on Reba wasn't as sexy sounding as if I was working on the pitch show even, which was this Simpsons kind of thing.
Spin-off.
Yeah. But I was thrilled.
And how long were you at Reba?
So I delivered scripts.
Yeah, it was just kind of like you were just kind of running around doing small, like, assistant tasks.
Yeah, they have the production office there, and there were a few PAs, and honestly, that's like one of the biggest things that I got out of. That is the biggest thing I got out of that job. Actually, is one of the other production assistants, the stage PA, was this guy named Keith Heisler, who went to Boston College, and he was really on top of. So I was at Reba for 2 years. I delivered scripts all over the city. I got to really know the city driving wise.
Why do you have to deliver scripts?
It was like just at the forefront of everything being emailed. There was still hard copy scripts every night to the cast in the studio and the network.
Oh, okay. So you had to deliver it to the people who were gonna
to their homes. Yeah.
Wow.
So I would get in at 1:00 in the afternoon and do some of the normal office-y stuff.
Yeah.
And then the script would come out at like 8 or 9, which is actually really early for a show. A lot of shows don't come out till like 3 or 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
So then I would, at like 9:00, go make like 200 copies of the script and stuff them in envelopes.
Yeah.
And do all of my internal distribution around the lot, and then get ready to go make like, let's say, 12 home deliveries all across LA. Yeah. And it was just this crazy route around the entire city. I made so much in gas mileage that year in my old Toyota Camry. And it was like a 3 or 4 hour trip every night all around LA.
Yeah.
And then there'd be guest casts sometimes, so it'd be like you'd be looking for new houses, and there were a lot of them were up in the hills, and I kind of enjoyed it though. I remember I'd make phone calls, early days of phone calls on cell phones where you had to watch your minutes, and you didn't have podcasts yet. That would have been a total game changer.
Yeah.
I mean, there was I listened to Loveline on K-Rock with Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla.
You didn't listen to audiobooks?
No, I mean, there was... I don't think I had a CD player in that car. No, I was pretty stuck. I got my first iPod not for several years after that.
Yeah.
So I did that, and the second year I just moved up to Office PA, which was actually kind of a crazy move because then I wasn't driving around all the time and I didn't make as much money.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I got out of that, I made a lot of good friends with the other assistants and some of the people, but this guy Keith had been paying attention. Fox produced Reba, even though it was on this other network called the WB, which no longer exists. And Fox had decided right then, because of tremendous DVD sales, that they were going to bring Family Guy back from cancellation and turn it back into a series. And not only that, but they were going to create a new series called American Dad. Yeah. And so my friend Keith, who was the stage PA on Reba, really worked all of his contacts at Fox and got an interview and became Seth Macfarlane's assistant for when Family Guy first came back. And shortly thereafter, he decided he wanted to move from being Seth's assistant to being writer's assistant on the new show on American Dad.
Yeah.
And so he said, my job as Seth's assistant is available, and there's also going to be a job as the assistant to the head writers on American Dad. I can get you an interview. And so I got to go on an interview, and it was Seth MacFarlane right there.
Yeah.
And then these two guys, Mike Barker and Matt Weitzman, who were partners who created American Dad with him.
Yeah.
And it was one of those Hollywood moments, just sitting in Seth MacFarlane's office. And I remember this guy, Andrew Kreisberg, telling me way back when that Hollywood is such a tough town and it's such a tough business that you really have to enjoy the small victories.
Yeah.
And so I went into this interview with Seth MacFarlane and these guys, and they were all comfortable like with each other, joking around, so I had to really like try and be comfortable, and I tried to joke around as much as possible.
So it was you and them three?
Yes. Yeah. Just the three of us.
That's intimidating.
Very much, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was super nervous, but I was like really trying to like get in there and joke around with them, and I remember this guy, Matt Weitzman, who's one of the showrunners of American Dad, almost like out of a handbook of a job interview thing. It was a strange thing for him to ask, honestly. You never kind of get those questions. But he asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah.
And I remember not having like not having a readily available answer to that, which I think is good and bad. I mean, I think it was good because it can be very off-putting in this business.
Well, it sounds too rehearsed.
And just an abundance of confidence, especially in comedy writing, is not necessarily
a good thing.
Yeah, you want someone who's like real and
that's slightly neurotic.
Yeah. I feel like I've met people who I've been like, so what do you want to do? And like, I want to be a showrunner in 2 years and that kind of thing. And it's like, you're way too confident and happy with yourself. But I said, I don't know, like, I guess I'd like to be like a low-level writer on a show. Yeah. But it's funny to think of that. Matt Weitzman had hair back then, too, I remember, and a goatee. Became very close with him. So I found out, didn't get that job. But before that, just leaving that interview, I remember having to just like think to myself, that was awesome. Whatever happened.
Like consider that a victory. Just the fact to be in an interview with them, with job interview. I mean,
with someone who, I mean, I watched Family Guy in college and just thought it was so brilliant, and and these two guys who created American Dad were on all those seasons of Family Guy. One of the guys, Mike Barker, had created the evil monkey, which was like a famous thing. It was just like really mind-blowing to me, and I was like, all right, whatever happens, that was awesome. And I found out soon afterwards that this other guy got the job as the assistant to Seth. This guy, Andrew Goldberg, who's now like an executive producer on Family Guy. He's done quite well, really nice guy. And I was like, well, great, it's not going to happen then, because I felt like, if anything, I had connected with Seth more than these two guys. But miraculously, I got this job thanks to Keith Heisler,
as an assistant
to the showrunner,
to Mike and Matt.
So it was like, if getting into Reba to become a PA was like getting into Harvard, this was like getting into like Harvard Medical School. It was like the next level. I was like, oh my god, I made it past that first level. And then it's just like with those guys, it was like one of those things where it's like hard to believe not in fate, because we just were so got each other and just became such close friends and really just understood each other. And so I was their assistant through the launch of this show.
But you were nervous about it. I mean, when I came here 10 years ago, you were, I mean, you know, well, I was.
You came here about 2 months into me working on that show. And one of the nights that we were hanging out, was the first night that Mike Barker, I was assistant, I worked for him, but we also had this kind of personal relationship, and he was like, what's going on? And I was like, we're just hanging out here, and he's like, can I come over?
Yeah.
And it was so, it was nerve-wracking. This guy who's like 36, really accomplished, shows up at my shitty apartment in Hollywood, where we're just like...
Well, I remember you were nervous. You were nervous about breaking that boundary between professionalism and friendship.
Yeah.
Like, you were like, he's going to come over. Are we going to hang, like, should we smoke pot? Should we not smoke pot?
Yeah.
You were like...
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, these ideas you have of adulthood and professionalism when you're in your 20s, too, and the line between them. But also in this industry, this entertainment industry, it's
I would have had the same questions that you had.
Yeah.
Because, like, you don't know. And you don't know if, like, you're going to say something weird and it's going to be held against you in the professional environment, or if he doesn't like pot, or, you know, if you act weird and he thinks you're weird, or...
Yeah. Yeah. But luckily he was and is just the same kind of crazy that I am, and fit right in, and it was really a meant-to-be kind of thing with those two guys. And so I was their assistant for a while, and then I moved over to being a writer's assistant, which was just like, that's like if becoming a PA on Reba is getting into Harvard, and becoming a showrunner's assistant is getting into Harvard Medical School. This is like getting placed at like the top hospital in Boston, let's say. Let's keep the Boston theme.
Yeah.
And the doctor theme. Because then it's like, all right, now you're actually sitting in the writer's room with all, like, a dozen writers, watching them do everything that they do, taking notes, and...
So your job was taking notes, kind of like...
Taking notes and putting out the scripts.
Okay, so taking notes of their brainstorming sessions.
Brainstorming,
Where they're just sitting there drinking coffee, they would brainstorm jokes, they would brainstorm, like, ideas for an episode, like a storyline, or what was it, or just, like, anything?
All that stuff, depending on what the day is. I mean, there's specific goals that you need to hit, according to production.
Okay, so if it's, like, the week where you have to come up with a storyline, people would say, like, what happens if this would happen?
Yeah, and there's several rooms going at once, so one room could be coming up with a new episode idea.
Yeah.
Another room could be rewriting a draft of that of a different episode.
Yeah. And
another room could be just specifically working on jokes for an episode that's further down the line, punching it up. And that, when I first saw that, when you're in just a straight joke room, that's like what you imagine the dream of this job is. It's the greatest thing in the world.
Of course.
There's just like 5 guys, 5 women, whatever, hanging out, joking around, trying to make each other laugh. It's like...
But based on something? Like, are they basing their jokes on the situations that were already established in the storyline? Or is this just, like, random... This would be funny if this would happen one time in one episode?
No, not at all.
It's based on the kind of skeleton of a storyline that already exists?
Yes, completely. I mean, it's like... There is a script that we're working off of, and let's say there's the end of Act 1 below is like... something like... like a character gets unexpected news, and a terrible, like, as they call it, house number of an example of a blow to that scene would be something like, uh-oh, or like, that went well, or like something like that.
Yeah.
And so 4 or 5 people are working on that one joke area, figuring out...
Kind of the last joke before the commercial break.
Yeah. But so imagine that, like, 20 times throughout. There's about, on average, like, let's say 20 areas to hit throughout a script that you have to go through and come up with 4 or 5 good alts for, and then at the end of the day, we would go into the big room and pitch the jokes to them, and it was kind of like whatever got the biggest laugh, and it was very fun.
And who would that, you'd be pitching to the other writers?
Yeah.
You wouldn't be, like, have a group of strangers?
No. It's not an animation at all, no.
Yeah. And so, like, were you impressed with, like, how laid back people were? I mean, were people just kind of saying anything, or did you feel like that people were hesitant to say something stupid, or was this kind of, were you nervous about?
I was certainly nervous. I mean, the thing about becoming a writer's assistant is there's sort of an unspoken decorum to it where you should not really say anything for at least a few months. You have to kind of feel out the room and the other writers in the room and the hierarchy of who's higher in the room and running the room. But really, first and foremost, become good at taking notes and scripts and listening and everything like that. And kind of look to them for clues that they want to hear from you, and getting to that level of comfort with them. And so by that point, I found what they did intimidating for sure. And by the time I started pitching the occasional joke, I was definitely nervous, and I didn't quite have it down yet. And
did they look at you weirdly when you said that? They're like, "Who? You speak? Why are you speaking?" Kind of, or did they kind of like say, "Oh, cool, he's contributing"?
It's like that. It becomes, if you're going to get to the point of pitching, ideally at that point the writers like you and are endeared to you, and
so you felt that it was like safe ground.
But it's still challenging and embarrassing. And this guy who helped me out a lot, taught me a lot, Kenny Schwartz, I pitched a particularly bad, like an encouraging area once, but didn't have the joke down at all. And he was like, write down the joke on a piece of paper in front of you before you pitch it. And that sort of exercise, which I don't necessarily do all the time anymore, but that sort of exercise really helped a lot, because I got to get the wording down and the exact idea down in my head, and possibly even like silently say it to myself for a second. And by doing that,
it gives you a chance to see if it's worth anything, or in finding the right phrasing, I guess is very important.
And also, just by the time you pitch it, you can pitch it with confidence. Which really gives the joke the best chance it has, if it is something or not. Pitching something with like a sort of like tentative question mark to it doesn't even if it's a really good joke, it won't sell the joke.
Also, if you're not clear with what it is, you have to, writing it down also helps you clarify and go to the goal of the joke, kind of being as succinct as possible, I guess.
Some of the best joke writers, I worked with this guy Eric Summers, who was just constantly, it's very easy in the room to sort of drift off and just think about jokes and or go on tangents, but there is something very, very valuable to a guy like Eric Summers. Would just always be scribbling in his script, like, and mouthing to himself, like trying to come up with jokes.
Like while people are shouting out jokes. You just kind of be in a corner.
Like we're all sitting in a room together. In that case, it was like couches all facing each other. A lot of times, it's a big table. It's all really casual. But he would just kind of have his head down in his script. And
is there, like, how much pressure is there to contribute to that? Like if one person comes up with 20 ideas in a sitting and another guy only 2, is there like, this is like kind of pressure, if I don't come up with enough ideas in a brainstorming session, I'm going to lose my job kind of thing? Or is it kind of based on how much you produce within a week? Like,
I mean, it's not,
you gotta, like,
it's not
pulling your own weight, pretty much.
Hopefully it's not about, your performance isn't based just on one day or one afternoon. It is more cumulative than that, but I mean, you do have to be able to deliver on that. You can't just skate by, like, because you can, I mean, you kind of have to have you can't just be good at story and not be good at jokes, and you can't really just be good at jokes and not story, and you kind of have to have a grasp of all of it to a certain degree.
But how do they measure that?
Yeah, it's all super intangible. I mean, it depends on who's running the show and how they respond to your stuff, and how you work with everybody else. What kind of
so the dynamic with the other writers counts a lot.
Huge.
Like you can be even if you come up with great ideas every now and then, if you're kind of a dick and no one likes you on the team, you could
huge. Yeah, that's like, I mean,
be fired. You can lose your job based on that if just people don't get a good vibe off of you.
Yeah, because it's like going on a road trip with someone it's like being in a car with someone for 14 hours a day.
Yeah, for 6 months.
It's huge, and that's why a lot of my success was luckily through meeting people who I really hit it off with, like those Barker and Weitzman on American Dad. And, and Alex Cuthbertson, who you introduced me to, who's my writing partner, we're a team, so we go on these, we go on staffing meetings together, and when we get hired on jobs, we're together, and that sort of increases your chance of pleasing. Yeah. Someone will like you, hopefully. Someone will like one of you.
Yeah. And so then you were the assistant, and then when did it start to become more and more? So you started to speak more and more within those meetings, and people started to see after a little while, oh, he's kind of funny, this guy. Let's give him more of a chance. Like
Yes. It's
And what was the chance? Like, was it an official thing? Was it like, okay, Matt, write a script? Or was it like, come sit with us now?
So Alex and I...
Well, when did Alex come? I thought this was before Alex.
This is around when Alex moved out to L.A. from New York after living with you. He moved out here, and he was working at ABC and Reality, and I was like, do you want to try and write a spec script together? Because my bosses and mentors are these partners, and it's like I understood the idea of a partnership now, and I wasn't having the best luck motivating myself to write on my own, and so
a spec script is like a fake American Dad script, like what could be potentially based on the characters that are already established.
We tried to write an American Dad, actually. We wrote an American Dad. It was really bad, but it had some funny stuff in it. We showed it around, and then we wrote like a...
You showed it to your bosses, or you showed it to other
we showed it to bosses, which is highly ill-advised, because you never want to write a spec for a show that... you never want to show a spec of someone's show to them, because they can pick it apart so easily. Whereas if we had done an Office spec or something like that and given it to the American Dad guys, they would judge it less harshly.
Because they know their characters inside and out.
They eat, breathe, and sleep it. But they were kind enough to us to be like, this is funny. I think maybe if you had the help of a room coming up with a story, you could do something funny. And eventually they agreed to give us a freelance script, so that I brought Alex in, and we in the room came up with this story, and pitched it to the bosses and fleshed it out, and got sent off with it over Christmas of probably 2006 or 7. And it was this really high octane week over the Christmas break, where we were just drinking a lot of coffee and really going crazy. And
how much did that help to have a writing partner?
A ton.
Like in the bouncing ideas.
It's invaluable. Except the value would be that you split a salary. So it costs something. But
in the beginning, it seems like it's very helpful.
Very, very, very helpful. Both in sharpening your skills and getting jobs. So we turned in this draft, and it was well received, and then we kind of had this agent sort of hip-pocketing us. Wouldn't sign us, but he would occasionally make a phone call on our behalf. And we got to do another American Dad script, and at that point we were like, you got to hire us. And we were like, there's no money, we can't do it. And this very nice guy who's a Family Guy writer now. He's a Simpsons writer. He was on American Dad at the time, named Rich Appel. Got us an interview with a friend of his who had a new show on Fox, a live-action show called Do Not Disturb, which didn't go for very long. That writer is now Abraham Higginbotham. He's on Modern Family. And we had a really good meeting with him, and he offered us the job. And that was like at that point, just like surreal.
Yeah.
And so we were going to take that job, and then all of a sudden American Dad was like, whoa. We've like raised you from infancy. And they really, they took it to the head of the studio, and they were like, all right, you can have money for them, but it's up to them what they want to do. And it was kind of a hard decision because there was part of us that wanted to go start something new, and get out from the safety of the nest. Yeah. But we ended up taking American Dad, and then we were on that show for like 3.5 years. It was great. Yeah. And then we wrote about 8 episodes of that show, and then...
And each episode got easier and easier?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, in a way. I think you just learn something. I think they got better and better. Yeah. And we learned how to do it in a much more sustainable fashion. Like that first script over Christmas when we were like pounding coffee and staying up like crazy, and just we learned how to have sort of normal days where we could kind of clock in and clock out. And that's
be a bit
nice.
More efficient with your time.
Yeah. And
did you feel all of a sudden, as part of the team, that you were getting more support?
It was a very supportive staff from the beginning. I mean, so my friend Keith, who had helped me get in there, had been promoted to writer. This other writer's assistant, Eric Durbin, had been promoted to writer. Yeah. It was a very upwardly mobile staff and very supportive staff. Some staffs are much more cutthroat and competitive, but that staff was really lovely. I got married during that, and most of the staff flew to New York and came to the wedding, and I still keep in really good contact with many of them. A lot of people have had babies, and it was like that cliched family that people talk about. But so after season 3.5, it was getting to the point where we didn't know if American Dad was going to come back, and we were also just looking to maybe make a move. And Chris McKenna, who was on American Dad for a while and had left very early on at the beginning of Community and become a really big voice there. Yeah. I was taking a jog right around the neighborhood one morning, and he almost hit me with his car on purpose, and was like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? How much longer are you going at American Dad? I was like, well, we're done in like a couple weeks. He's like, well, I think we're going to have some openings at Community. Would you be interested? I was like, yeah, of course. Yeah. So American Dad finished up, and we almost immediately went in to interview with Dan Harmon and the executive producers on Community, and got that job and went on for like the back 9, as they call it, of season 3, which was like really crazy time.
What does that mean? Back 9.
So when shows had 22 episodes back in the day, you'd say like for instance, like a show gets 13 episodes when it first gets ordered, and then they're just like, if we can just get a back 9, It's a golf term, referring to the back 9 holes of 18 holes of golf. Yeah. And that was extremely difficult. Dan Harmon's like a genius who works his own way completely. He doesn't start working on the script until like 6 or 7 at night, but you're there all day, and then it starts. I mean, our first day at Community, something like 36 hours. We got there on a Monday morning and went home on a Tuesday night.
Jesus.
Slept under our desk for like an hour.
So, I mean, this transition was very hard.
Very abrupt, yeah. Coming from American Dad.
I mean, can it be that different, a writing team?
Yeah. It just depends on who's in charge.
Okay.
Yeah. But that was exciting too because it was our first live action show and it was pretty popular and respected.
It was, yeah, it's a great show.
Chevy Chase was right there, Joel McHale, these beautiful actresses. It was something. We got to do an episode of that, and that was a whole different thing, being on set for the first time. You have a director that you're put with each time. Our director was Jay Chandrasekhar, who's one of the Broken Lizard guys, one of the founders of that. He's one of the actors in it too, and he was a really nice guy. And Dan Harmon got fired after that season, and it was such a hard job too. We were like, maybe this is like a good opportunity to show some solidarity and also just move on.
Yeah,
it was the first time we were ever. Animation is on such a different schedule, just by the year. It's not at all like live action. So this was the first time we were ever available to go on meetings for the regular network TV pickups. So we did our first staffing season and went on all these meetings, and through that ended up with a couple different offers and decided to go on this show, Ben and Kate, which seemed pretty promising. It had this guy, Matt Fusfeld, who's a hilarious improvisational actor and at the Groundlings, and he's also a screenwriter. His writing partner is Jim Rash, who was the dean on Community, so it was that little connection. And they wrote Alexander Payne's The Descendants and won an Oscar for it, which is seems very out of character. It's like they're the funniest guys in the world, and it was this sort of dramatic movie, and they're the greatest. And so he was the star of it, and then Dakota Johnson, who's Don Johnson and Melanie Griffith's daughter, and who's coming up soon, I think in October, will be starring in 50 Shades of Grey, getting like crazy naked, I think. And it was a really good experience, really got to become more comfortable on set there and working with the actors and in the confines of production, and that show unfortunately went like 15 episodes and got canceled. But it was produced by Fox and the Chernin Company, and as soon as it was canceled, like a day or two later, the Chernin Company called us and was like, "You want to go meet on New Girl?" Which they had also produced.
Existed already.
Yeah, New Girl was in its second season at that point, and
so I mean, by this point, you had a reputation where people were starting to call you.
Yeah,
and not.
Yeah, it is that weird thing where you're trying so hard for so long to
get your foot in the door and in contact,
and it flips all of a sudden.
Yeah, when was that? Was that moment that you kind of realized that it was flipping?
No, I mean, the thing, that's why you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, is it happened, like, right away when we got staffed on American Dad, to the point where you're like, this is not necessarily indicative of anything.
Yeah.
You kind of have to be like, all right, this is fun and all, but it doesn't mean that we're good or anything.
Yeah.
I think we did, like, we're always, it's reliable in the room. We turn in solid drafts. We deliver what people ask for.
Yeah, which I guess is already something that not everybody does.
Right, it's a commodity. We don't have egos. We're just like there to help.
Yeah.
But so New Girl, I mean, is and was a very funny show.
Yeah.
I was very much a fan of that show. Probably the most of anything we had worked on, and we were very excited, and we met on it, and we were like, oh my God, are we going to just go right into another show now, too? It was like January or February, and they were like, well, we can't get the money yet, but we want you for next year. We're like, all right, we'll see. Yeah. Like one of those things, like, you never know when they'll be saying, and almost immediately when the season ended, right as we were about to have to go on staffing meetings all over again, we got like an early offer and got to take that, which was great also because when you're going back to a show, then you have like these couple months off where you're basically on vacation.
Where you have the job waiting for you, but you don't have anything to do at that time. It's great.
And that was another really... So we started that show and just really loved everyone on staff there, and the showrunners, Liz Merriweather, Brett Baer, and Dave Finkel, just really, really appreciated their senses of humor and what they wanted to do, and it was a really nice fit. And so this is our second year on that show now.
Is this do you kind of finally feel like you're where you wanted to be? Like finally on a show that you're proud of, that you corresponds to your sense of humor? Well, I guess you kind of already felt that with American Dad a bit.
Right, I felt that on American Dad, and then Community was very difficult.
Yeah.
And that was just a shock to the system all around, because I'd started on American Dad as an assistant.
Yeah.
I was there for 7 or 8 years altogether, the longest place I'd ever been in my life on anything. Spent the most amount of time with everybody, so it was hard to leave that. Yeah. And then especially go to a difficult show that I didn't necessarily... The thing about that show is Dan Harmon writes every word of it.
Yeah, okay.
Chris McKenna, too, and a couple other people, but very hard to contribute to that show, so that was not exactly creatively fulfilling. It was awesome to be around, and I learned a lot. And then Ben and Kate, I don't know if I had the tone exactly right. So yeah, I think creatively I was and am very, very satisfied with working on this show. But to say, like, where I want to be, I don't know. That's like...
No, but now it feels like the best fit.
It's a good fit, but I'm excited about... I'm very easily adaptable, I think.
Yeah.
I'm just happy to have the job and to be someplace that I can contribute to.
And you just wrote with Al the
episode 2 of season 4. We just shot that.
Is the
last
second
week.
one that you wrote with Alex?
No, we wrote 2 last year. We usually write about 2 a season.
Okay, so this is the third.
This is the third New Girl.
Yeah.
And that'll air in about a month, which is also fun compared to animation.
Yeah, it's much quicker.
Yeah. It's about a month till it airs, whereas animation is like a year turnaround.
Yeah.
It's very gratifying.
Yeah, and it's also gratifying to see actors adding things to what you wrote.
Yeah, these actors are incredible. This show is just proof of how important actors are.
Yeah.
You can have just like a great script and not so good actors, and it could be a dud, or you could have like an okay script and great actors, and it could be really good.
Yeah.
The chemistry, but it's such a hard thing to pin down. I'm sure everyone, better people than me, have tried to figure it out, just where you can get this chemistry from. But it's like the whole cast feel like they're like friends and roommates, and it's not something you can really fake.
Yeah.
Or if they do fake it, they're
the good actors.
Yeah.
What's your idea about creating your own series now that you have experience in this field? How much of that is a desire?
It becomes more and more because, we sit on set for our episode and, or just in the room, as we have become more confident in our instincts and sensibilities and all of that, there's less and less of a desire for approval from some sort of boss.
Yeah.
And so it does increase more and more to be like, well, I'd like to see what it would look like if we were the final say on everything.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of natural.
Intimidating though? Like this kind of pressure, like this idea that you would be the responsible one, that if the show works or not, it would be your fault, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
But now it's kind of, you're ready for that?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if there's like a dissociation or something from being embarrassed about, an episode that you've written being funny. Like for I like our first couple episodes when they aired, I used to be like, oh my god, like people on Facebook,
gonna destroy it,
email, like all that kind of thing. And yeah, I think at a certain point, I think it's common, I have done it, that I just sort of dissociate myself. I mean, I read all that stuff, but I don't take it personally anymore.
Yeah.
And it's because you can't. And ultimately, the lesson there too is, when you're doing something that is good, and when you're doing something that's subpar.
But you've gained that knowledge.
I guess so. It's about just being able to recognize it. It's inherent.
Yeah.
But I think, well, it's like when you're doing something so passionate to yourself, like when you stand up and when you know when you love something that you're doing and you feel great about it. It is about getting to the point where you're like not asking how that was afterwards.
Yeah.
So much, not looking for that.
But I mean, haven't you written jokes that you love that for like either the other writers don't like, or that have actually gotten to be aired and they're just for some reason? Well, I guess I don't know if you can tell which jokes.
It's hard to tell. Yeah. But they definitely.
That you've believed in, that you've been like, yes, this is the best joke I've ever written, and
completely. And that's something early on you have to come to terms with too. Is like, kill your babies.
Yeah,
there'll be more.
Yeah, that trust, I guess, that like you can create other babies.
Yeah, it was hard at first.
Yeah,
Alex especially, I feel like has a hard time with that still. But
well, as a stand-up comic, it's hard too.
Yeah,
like a joke that you believe in. And you test it 5 times and it still doesn't work, but you're like, I love this joke.
Yeah.
And you just have to say, like...
Well, that's such an interesting thing, because I think we would have different perspectives on it that way, because you have this empirical evidence, I guess, that a joke is not working, but...
Yes and no, because you can have it, like, kill. Like, I've had jokes that kill.
Yeah.
Several times, and then sometimes just stop working and just never work again.
Yeah.
For some strange reason, perhaps it's because I don't believe in the joke or it doesn't sound credible anymore. Other jokes that work sometimes, 1 out of 2, it depends who we have in the audience. And so it is empirical, but at the same time, not at all. Like, it's the most subjective. And there's some jokes I still don't know what to do with. Because it's just, they're hit or miss.
I think that sort of thing is what defines honing your voice, where sticking with that joke, knowing that it will hit with some people, and it's like a version of like not pandering to the audience. This is me,
and you assume it.
This is me. Like, are you into it or not?
Yeah.
This is what I believe is funny.
Yeah.
And so, you don't have the luxury on a sitcom of proving yourself to an audience right there, and you don't want to be the fucking asshole in the room who's like, we have to do this joke. It is more important
that I get this joke in there than...
It's more important to be congenial and be like easy to work with.
Yeah.
I mean, you pick your battles.
Yeah.
But do you really want to fall on your sword for a shit joke that you're not totally positive?
But are you ever frustrated that your voice is not coming through enough because it's such a team production? Are you sometimes frustrated that, like, I don't hear Matt Fusfeld in all this?
No, I mean, I know what you're saying, but I'm just happy to get a few jokes in an episode and know that I took part in steering a storyline or an idea or a nugget of something. I don't have that sort of ego or auteur kind of thing, and I think that's helpful. And
it sounds like it's helpful and necessary.
Yeah,
in a writer's team.
Yeah,
or like you can have it, but not on that project. Like you can have it if you do something else on the side, or if you were to create your own thing.
The idea also about creating our own thing is pulling all of our favorite people that we've worked with along the way. I mean, collaboration is such a beautiful thing. It's like how we first started working together on that Your Sketch comedy team, the Incontinentals. It's like making music. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
and you can. I think that the funniest stuff comes from some of the funniest scripts come when we're in a jam and we have to room write a script in a few days instead of getting sent off to write it. And then it's like 5 or 6 really funny people sitting and I mean, it's like it reminds me so much of like
it's like jamming together as musicians.
Like jamming together as musicians, or like you're just like a game night or something at someone's house. You're just all playing the same board game and it's making each other. It's the most fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. My goal has never been really to be like a Lena Dunham voice of a generation, Louis C.K. type. I've just been happy to make a living doing it because it's such a enjoyable job.
Well, it's a dream job. It's really a dream job.
It's the greatest.
Do you have any advice? Lots of people who listen to this are French people who are, well, speak English, obviously, enough, but also are, geeks of American television. American series are very, what I realize is that, I don't know if you guys realize this, but the things that are produced in the States often are exported, and become popular. You probably don't think about, like, writing an episode that will be seen by a German person, that's probably dubbed, but still, can inspire someone in Japan, and most of the production of the greatest series today are coming out of LA and always have. Do you have any advice for people who, are fascinated by this world coming from abroad?
Yeah, I mean, I think you really have to. There's a phrase like earn your seat at the table. There's so many talented people in LA who are not in the jobs that they could be, and it's because it's hand in hand. Like, you have to be smart and funny and write and work really hard, but so much of it is also just like paying your dues and developing relationships. Doing the right. You're not gonna. I don't think, for the most part, be plucked from obscurity if you're sitting in your apartment, even if you're writing the best scripts in the world. It's like you have to find and meet people who want to read them and want to help you. So you have to, developing relationships is hand in hand.
Because that's the kind of cliche we have of LA, is that like it's who you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is a cliche, and it gets a negative connotation, but it's also like, in what other industry
is that not true?
Yeah. It paints TV script writing in such a light that it's like you're a painter or something like that, which I don't really think is true. It's a very
social,
commercially, you're doing commercial art.
Yeah.
To call it even art is challenging.
Yeah.
But it has elements of it. It's a great way to, I think it's where art and commerce meet.
Yeah.
It's just like, there's so many talented writers out there who are not working because
they're stuck in their own room writing.
Yeah.
They're not getting out there.
But,
well, so what would be the advice? Is to get out there and make
make connections.
Would you say come out to LA specifically?
You have to.
Yeah. If you want to make it an American sitcom, you have to come out to LA.
Absolutely.
No regret. I mean, not New York.
No.
LA.
No, I mean, New York has some productions. LA has like
90%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hustle.
Yeah.
Like any other career.
Someone who's 35, should they still bother?
Well, of course.
Yeah.
It's going to be harder.
Yeah.
But a lot of dramatic writers too. It's a little bit of comedy is a little bit of a younger man's game, but yeah, of course you should.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your thoughts on the idea of like nepotism and it's who you know.
Of course, I think it's unfair that someone who doesn't have talent gets somewhere just because of the people they know.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think I should clarify is you can do all of this networking and set yourself up to be in the right position and even perhaps get a job as a comedy writer, but you won't last if you don't have the talent.
Yeah, well, that seems pretty clear.
Yeah. So that's kind of the caveat to it is, and that's sort of the trouble I was having is I was doing a lot of the networking and not enough of the writing until Alex moved out here and we started writing all the time together. and it was sort of worthless, even though I had these great relationships.
Yeah. So you really need both.
You need absolutely both.
Yeah.
I'm also such a believer in the sort of on-the-job training of, in no other job you just come on and start like, you don't like this, you don't, you're like, I want to be a lawyer, I'm going to go, you know what, I'm going to go try and get hired as a lawyer.
Yeah.
It's like you go to law school and,
yeah.
and
then
all that stuff.
You intern perhaps even.
And being in a writer's room and writing for a show is like, you're running like $1 million company. There's so much to learn, and I'm still learning all of those things, which is why I'm not in the greatest rush to have our own show yet, even though that's sort of...
Well, it's kind of dovetails into the last question, is what do you want to be doing? Like, I'm going to ask the Matt Weitzman, was it Matt?
Yeah.
Who asked you, where do you want to be in 5 years?
I would like to be working on a show, whether it be my own show or just a show like New Girl that I feel passionate about, and that I'm working with really great, talented people who we're coming up with really good stuff together, and I'm just doing work that I think is funny and I'm proud of, and constantly challenging myself with new things every day, and just being happy. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Still doing stand-up, but more successfully in the sense of, not having to question whether I'm going to fill the room or not. It's still, it's gotten better, but it's still always a question. Moving on to film or TV or something, into another medium would be nice.
In Paris.
Probably. Or connecting. I like connecting, I'm performing stand-up comedy in English in Paris. I have lots of people come from abroad. I like the idea of kind of networking internationally. Coming out here would be great, and kind of doing something in relation. It's still vague, and that's probably what's not happening, is because it's vague. Getting into, it was great to get into radio recently. I'm still more attracted to film than I am TV, but I understand that TV is often a way to get people to trust you with film money and film energy. But yeah, stand-up to me is kind of the core. It's kind of all the pillar that holds all that together.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I should define that, because I think the more quickly I define precisely where I want to be in 5 years, the quicker it will come.
That's well said.
So I'm really proud of you, Matt.
Oh, thanks. I'm proud of you.
So, well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Donc voilà quoi, le podcast avec Matt Fusfeld. J'espère que ça vous a plu, j'espère que ça vous a motivé d'aller à Los Angeles, ou peut-être justement ça vous a démotivé, parce que vous avez dit « Ah merde ça, j'ai 35 ans, et je peux pas aller là-bas, c'est trop dur, et il fait beau tout le temps, c'est insupportable ». Donc merci d'avoir écouté de toute manière, et si ça vous a plu, n'hésitez pas à aller sur la page Facebook de Donc Voilà Quoi. Si vous voulez me voir, j'ai une semaine assez chargée cette rentrée, donc tant mieux. Tous les dimanches, je suis en anglais à la péniche, à la nouvelle scène, à partir du mois d'octobre, tous les dimanches à 18h. Tout le mardi, je suis en français, mon one-man show en français, au gymnase, dans le studio Maribel. Tout le jeudi, je joue dans une pièce que j'ai coécrite avec ma chérie, et ça sera au Théâtre Montmartre Galerie tous les jeudis à 21h30. Et j'anime toujours le plateau tout le vendredi qui s'appelle The New York Comedy Night. C'est le plateau en anglais au So Gymnase, au 4e étage. Voilà, je pense que j'ai tout dit. Voilà.